Welcome back. Thanks a lot for staying with us. The Taliban's de facto authorities have banned women and girls from attending universities and getting higher education in Afghanistan. According to the letter which has been released by Taliban's Ministry of Higher Education, which is effective immediately, completed all the restrictions in the Taliban imposed on Afghan women's life in the 1990s, taking Afghanistan and Afghan women nearly 3 decades back. It says, based on cabinet decisions, education for women is suspended until further notice, unquote. Remember, the Taliban recaptured power over 15 months ago and immediately deprived girls of their fundamental rights by banning secondary education for grade 6 and above, but women were allowed to attend universities in a gender-segregated class. No country in the world currently recognizes the Taliban government. Rumors of closing universities have been circulating on the Afghan social media since a new leader was appointed for the Ministry of Higher Education position. The international community, of course, has condemned this decision. In a statement that was put out by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he said that the United States condemns in the strongest terms the Taliban's indefensible decision to ban women from universities, keeping secondary schools close to girls, and continue to impose other restrictions on the ability of women and girls in Afghanistan. Remember, when the Taliban came back to power, they had made claims of being a softer Taliban. But with the kind of developments that we are seeing, have we gone back to the dark ages? So if you're a woman or a girl in Afghanistan, this is how your life looks like. Let me just talk to you about the diktats and the restrictions that the Taliban has already imposed on women after they came back to power. Ban from university education. Remember, school education was already an issue, and now you won't get university education as well. You're also banned from gyms and public baths. But that's not all. There is also a diktat as far as public parks and fun fairs are concerned. If you step out, you need to have a male representative with you. So you can't travel without a male escort. So you just don't have freedom. Banned from acting on TV as well. Even for news anchors, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, you can't anchor without covering face. So this is what the diktats currently look like. As I said, the international community, of course, has condemned these decisions. Let me quickly run you through some of the decisions and the reactions actually that we are seeing. From U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, deeply dismayed by Taliban's announcement. But it's not just the United States. You're also seeing a reaction from the Prime Minister of UK, Rishi Sunak, saying denying access to university is a grave step backwards. And he's in fact used his personal life experience saying, I have daughters and I find it unimaginable if you restrict women from getting education. As far as the UN spokesperson is concerned, saying another broken promise as far as the Taliban is concerned. And this is what I said. When they came back to power, they said that this time things will be different. What really has changed? Nothing, is what people on the ground say. As far as UK's UN ambassador is concerned, this is what she has to say. No prosperous Afghanistan without fair justice system, because you are actually restricting half the population from getting education. What really is happening, and what can the international community do? Let me bring in our guests as well. We have Fawzia Kufi, ex-Afghan lawmaker, author and women's rights activist. We also have senior journalist and scholar James M. Dorsey. Good to have both of you on the broadcast with us. James, I'd like to begin the conversation with you. First school education, now university education. Are we really surprised?
Not really. I think what we're seeing is the rise of the hardline, more conservative elements within the Taliban. And the reason for that, I think, is twofold. One is that engaging with the outside world and trying to put forward a more inclusive face has failed since the American withdrawal from Afghanistan in August 2001. 2021, as well as the takeover by the Taliban, the international community across the board, not just the West, but also China and Russia, have not really been willing to engage as long as there is not an inclusive government. And that hasn't happened. I think the second reason is that the Taliban have not been able to counter the Islamic State in Afghanistan. And that, of course, is a conservative and hardline challenge to the Taliban.
Fawzia, I want to bring you also in the conversation. You, of course, have been very vocal as to how the situation is only deteriorating in Afghanistan. What are the kind of emotions that you're feeling or experiencing today?
Yeah, I'm surprised by some of our commentators who say Talib can dismantle Daesh or ISIS-K. No military extremist group actually can dismantle other one. And the world has absolutely been engaged with Taliban. In fact, their back-to-back restrictive measures on women is being empowered by the world engagement, regardless of their track record and their deeds on the ground about women's rights. They have had meetings at high level with international community. $40 million go to them every week. The region has been engaged with them. India has their embassy open there. Pakistan has the embassy there. Russia has the embassy there. So I don't really know what does it mean when we say engagement. From somebody's perspective who has spent all my life in Afghanistan except few last months and invested my blood in Afghanistan, I don't believe that giving more privilege to Taliban will actually respond. I think there should be a political pressure, and that political pressure should be unified by all international community, including countries in the region. I think different countries have a security-centric approach because they want to keep their borders safe. Okay. As long as their own borders are safe, they want to give bribe to Taliban. That is not going to work.
So you're saying the international community just cannot be silent and mute spectators. There needs to be more pressure politically. I'll just get to that in just a bit in terms of what the international community can do. But I want to just take a step back. And James, what I want to understand is, and this is what we've been saying, the Taliban said it will go quote unquote softer this time around. With the kind of diktats that continue to come out, can the Taliban really expect to be a legitimate member of the international community until the fact they decide that they have to respect the rights of Afghans, women included?
I agree with you on that. What I'm saying is it may very well be that they no longer expect to be a legitimate member of the international community. We're now 18 months after the U.S. withdrawal, and the international community has not engaged with the Taliban by and large. They haven't recognized the Taliban government. Most countries still do not have diplomatic representation in Afghanistan. There's no humanitarian support that goes through the government. So on all of those counts, it may very well be that the Taliban just simply figure it's not going to work. They're going to have to do this on their own. And that's when you get more conservative forces having the upper hand, particularly when they're being challenged by militants.
Fawzia, speaking specifically from your own experience and what this means for girls and women, just a couple of weeks ago, you had this very heartwarming video of an Afghan child and a girl who said all she wanted to do was to study. Today, looking back at videos like those or, looking back at the future of girls and women, how many dreams have been shattered today?
Millions of dreams. And I really don't want to play this victims politics anymore. We have really been victimized by different powers at different level by different countries. I think the world really has been so much engaged with Taliban that engagement boosted Taliban's position. Remember that the Taliban were brought to power after the deal that was signed with them by the United States. And let's not forget that in that deal, there is no one word mentioned about human rights and women's rights. So the people of Afghanistan feel that they're being betrayed by international community. Every week, $40 million go to the Central Bank of Taliban without any checks and balance. There is more than $1 billion only the U.S. support to humanitarian aid. Taliban claim that they have increased their domestic revenue, apparently. Let's believe that. If that is correct, where is that money going? They're spending money to empower their military actions and to train their military section of the Taliban. They feel no responsibility towards the people, and they want the rest of the world to feed the people. So no accountability on the promise when they were giving us during the negotiation, no responsibility towards the people. They want the rest of the world to feed them. And we think still that there is not enough engagement. We justify the Taliban's barbaric act by saying that because we didn't engage and we didn't recognize them.
Yeah.
Probably this term of recognition should really be interpreted. What does it mean when we say recognition? I believe personally that women's rights in Afghanistan is not just a matter of women's rights in Afghanistan. It's a matter of global security. And therefore, we have to really look at it from that perspective and pressurize Taliban, sanction Taliban and their supporters, their funders, charge them on the ICC on the basis of crimes against humanity. If this happens in your own borders, in your own shores, will you really simply simplify it to the extent that because we haven't been engaged with them, they're doing so? No, because we have given them so much privilege by engaging with them. They are traveling with private jets while women of Afghanistan cannot travel.
I like the point that you're making, that the narrative now needs to be rewritten. You cannot play the victim anymore. You need to have boundaries set clearly. You need to have more pressure being mounted by political representatives worldwide. I like the point that you're making. But essentially, I'm trying to understand how should the international community even view what is happening, James? And this is what I want to bring you back in. I said this when I, started talking about this issue, that when Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan, they said it was going to be a new chapter. But nothing really has changed, has it?
Indeed. I think that the expectation that they were going to be accepted within the family of nations hasn't worked out for them. The international community has basically demanded that they put up an inclusive government. The government that they have put up is not viewed as inclusive enough or inclusive at all. And as a result, Afghanistan is an internationally isolated country. Various nations engage with them informally, if you wish, to different degrees, but have not returned their embassies to Kabul and have not been willing to engage in terms of providing the sort of economic and humanitarian aid that Afghanistan needs. And as a result, I think what you're seeing is the hardliners, the ultra-conservatives within the Taliban, basically saying, we don't need to make concessions because we're not going to get anything in return. And on top of that, we're being challenged by the Islamic State and must respond to that.
So, James, what I'm essentially also trying to understand is that if you see the pattern of what's happening in Afghanistan, there is an understandable degeneration every day. In November, they prohibited women from going to parks, fun fairs, gyms, and public baths. Women have also been pushed out of many government jobs or are being paid a slashed salary to just stay at home. They're also barred from traveling without a male relative and must cover up outside of the home, ideally a burqa. So what really can the international community do at this point?
Well, there's very little that one can do without basically direct intervention. Aid is frozen. The Taliban are frozen out of diplomatic engagement with the international community on a whole variety of issues that are crucial to them. So as a result, and the notion that pressure was going to push the Taliban in a more moderate direction has proven to be wrong. It's pushed them in the other direction.
Well, really an unfortunate reality, and easier said than done for people who are actually not in Afghanistan. Fawzia and James, a pleasure speaking to both of you. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on CNN News 18. We're now shifting our focus. It's back once again. If we thought COVID is behind us, well, that doesn't seem to be the case. Videos emerging from China indicate that all is not well. Top epidemiologists are now suggesting that infections could wipe out 60% of Beijing's population. As per reports, crematoriums in China are taking cremations 24/7. For India, the worry is what happens in China doesn't stay in China. What is BF7, the variant which has now been detected, unfortunately, in India? How effective are our vaccines against it? And how should we prepare ourselves? To answer all of this, we have with us our newsmaker for this evening, Dr. Randeep Guleria, the former director at AIMS. Doctor, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here. As I said, there is a bit of anxiety, there is a bit of panic because people are not very clear of what really is happening, whether India will see a similar pattern like China or not. So let's really begin with the basics. What do we know so far as this variant is concerned? Is this Omicron or is this something else?
So whatever data we're having is suggesting that the variant that we're looking at is B.7, which is in sublineage of the Omicron variant, the B.5. And what it's being seen is that this variant is having two properties which are of concern. That is, it is more infectious. It is spreading more rapidly than the previous variants. And it has also got an immune escape mechanism. That is, it's able to escape the immune protection that we've had because of past infection or because of vaccination. So those are the two things that this variant is showing. But what we're seeing in India, this variant was reported in October. But since it's being reported in October till now, we've not seen any surge in the number of cases in terms of hospitalization or in terms of deaths. And therefore, it's still causing more mild illness rather than a severe illness as we're seeing in China.
So, Doctor, you said this is the variant which is now being called BF7. Unfortunately, we already have about 4 cases of this new variant which have been detected from India. How different is it from the previous variants?
So the only difference that we're seeing, and the difference is actually the important issue to understand here is why is it behaving differently in China as compared to India? These 4 variants that we have seen were reported in October itself. But we have not seen a surge in the number of cases. We're not seeing a huge increase in hospitalization.
True.
And as a matter of fact, our cases are actually much lower than what we've ever had before. And that's because of the fact that we've had a very good aggressive vaccine policy. Almost the entire population has had 2 doses of the vaccine, and people are being encouraged to take the booster dose or the preventive dose. And along with that, many of us have had natural infection, and therefore there is a good amount of immunity in our population. The situation in China is different because China adopted a zero COVID policy.
Yeah.
They had lockdown even there were very few mild cases. And therefore, there is a large part of the population which has not been exposed to the virus even naturally or has not taken the vaccine. Therefore, their population is like we were, let's say, in 2020, early part of 2020, where we had not been exposed to the new virus and we had no immunity. Because of that, with the new variant, they're seeing a surge of number of cases, and they're seeing more admissions in the high-risk group and the elderly because they're not vaccinated and they've not got any natural immunity because of infection. We are in a better position because we opted for a different solution.
Okay.
And therefore, I think the situation is different. But we need to be vigilant because we know that as the number of cases increases, the virus can further mutate. And therefore, in terms of severe illness, hospitalization is something that we need to closely monitor.
Sure.
We must encourage people to come forward to get themselves tested, and genome sequencing should be done so that we are able to pick up any new variant early and see how it's behaving in terms of hospitalization, deaths, spread of the infection, and in terms of evading the immunity that we have because of vaccines.
Well, that's true, and that's heartening to hear, Dr. Guleria, but I also want to understand where we stand currently. Realistically speaking, our testing is not so aggressive anymore. Do you think that's where a priority should be, to get more testing done?
I think so. I think we need to increase testing. What is happening currently is a large number of people feel that COVID is over or that now it's a mild. Many people have flu-like symptoms which look very much like COVID, but they would not get themselves tested and they would just take symptomatic treatment. They may even isolate themselves, but testing is something that they're not coming forward in doing. There are also some people who do the rapid antigen test.
Yeah.
And if they are positive, they don't report it, they don't get the RT-PCR done, and they also just isolate themselves. Therefore, we don't have 2 databases. One is The actual number of cases, I think we don't know, because unless you get yourself tested, it will never be recorded. And if your rat is positive and you don't report it, it will also never be recorded. Secondly, unless we get more testing done and people come forward and get themselves tested as a responsibility, we will not be able to pick up new variants or be able to see how they are behaving. So I think we need to do two things. One is encourage people to come forward and get themselves tested if they have flu-like symptoms, and get the RT-PCR test done so that genome sequencing can be done. And secondly, we have to have aggressive surveillance in hospitals across the country, so that if there is an increase in cases of flu-like symptoms, patients being admitted in the ICU or in the hospital, their genome sequencing and testing is done on a regular basis.
Sir, I just want to go back and talk about the patterns that we are seeing from China to India. Now, a lot of experts are saying the reason that we're seeing these surge in cases in China is because their efficacy of vaccines is questionable as of now. Compare that to the vaccines that we've taken here in India. How effective are they against this new strain?
So the data that we have currently as far as vaccines in India are concerned, and this has been now published in a large number of journals and been peer reviewed and done by many groups, including researchers at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, suggest that the vaccines do protect us against the new variants also to some extent, and therefore these vaccines are robust enough. As far as the Chinese vaccines are concerned, we don't have that data. We don't know how effective they are against the new variants, because that data has not emerged from China. And therefore, whether they should look at new vaccines or get vaccines from outside to vaccinate the population has always been a question which one has not been able to find an answer for, and China is not willing to do that. In our case, I think we have robust data to suggest that currently the vaccines are helping us protecting our population against severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Yes, we will have cases. The vaccine is not that effective against getting the infection and stopping the spread of the infection. So that will continue. But I think that's all right as long as we don't have severe cases or hospitalizations or deaths.
Dr. Guleria, now, of course, I want to talk to you about what we should be doing as of now in India. The first question that everybody wants an answer to is, should India ban flights? Do you think that's a rational approach?
No, I don't think so. Banning flights now is an option. That was something that had been done in the early part of the pandemic. But now, like I said, we also know that B.7 is already present in our country since October. So banning flights is not going to really be of much use. Secondly, we know that people travel from different hubs, whether it be the Middle East or from Europe. And therefore, trying to really stop travel is going to be very, very difficult. It's not usually effective. What I would say is that we should encourage people who travel and who have come from outside and develop flu-like symptoms, develop symptoms which suggest that it could be a COVID infection, should come forward, get themselves tested, and a genome sequencing can be done to see whether in them there is any new variant, so that we can pick it up early. So people should feel that responsibility and get themselves tested if they have symptoms if they come from outside. But banning flights totally would be, in my mind, counterproductive and will not be really very helpful.
Okay, the other aspect that a lot of people, of course, had some queries about is, what about the booster dose? We do know that the numbers aren't very high as far as people who've taken that precautionary or booster dose. Do you think that will also now become a priority and more people should come forward and take that jab?
Yes, I think so. I think this is something that we need to push for, because a large number of people now have started saying that COVID is over, and therefore we should not take the precautionary dose or the booster dose because now there is no need for it. I don't think that is true. COVID is not over. We are still seeing cases in our own country, and we're seeing cases also in different parts of the world, and a huge surge in China. Therefore, for all those individuals who are due for the precautionary dose or the booster dose, I would really say or urge that they should come forward and get themselves vaccinated. It will protect them both from getting severe infection, hospitalization, death, and to some extent, it will also protect them from getting symptoms of long COVID. And therefore, I think everyone should come forward and get themselves vaccinated. That has come down dramatically, and that is also a cause of concern.
Lastly, Dr. Guleria, this is the holiday season. We all thought it was behind us. Going into 2023, how prepared is India?
So I think India is well prepared from 2 points of view. We've learned a lot of lessons from COVID, and therefore we had a very aggressive and good vaccine policy and research. And as far as the vaccine front is concerned, is very good. We have a number of vaccines now available in our country. And therefore, as far as COVID is concerned, we are in a better situation from the protection point of view as far as vaccine is concerned. We also have a good surveillance system, the INSAGOG, and that is also very helpful. And also, I think the healthcare facility is better geared up than ever before to manage outbreaks and pandemics. And therefore, we are in a better position than what we were 2 years ago. But I think we still need to continue to be vigilant and be prepared for any outbreak that may happen. It could be COVID related or it could be related to other viruses. And that is something that we need to do in the new year, that continue our aggressive surveillance and monitoring for new outbreaks and new variants as far as COVID-19 is concerned.
Dr. Guleria, always a pleasure speaking to you. So there you've heard from the top health expert that you need to go back to the basics because it's not over. So wear a mask, wash your hands, sanitize yourself. And if you haven't taken that booster or precautionary vaccine, do go forward and take it. Well, with that, it's a wrap from my side. Thanks a lot for watching.